Hello, everyone. Darlene and I have been married for nearly 7 years now, and we've had a lot of conversations in that time about her experience as an immigrant to the United States from the Philippines. And talking about the things she observed since she's come here and the differences from where she came from. And all of those have yielded, those conversations have yielded insights that I felt would be beneficial to many others if they were able to hear it. So we started talking, and I asked her if she would be willing to record one of those conversations sometime where we could share it with you. And she was gracious enough to sit down with me and be able to have that conversation. So we hope that you'll enjoy it and find insights here and join us on this journey as we explore some of these themes.
Oh, are we starting now?
Yes, we're starting now.
Okay, I guess you have to say one, two, three, go.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Okay. Thank you for doing this with me.
No problem.
So, all right. So we've had so many conversations that were extremely interesting about culture and about the difference between, say, coming from the Philippines and things you've observed about American culture since you've been here. That, of course, the insider would never we'd never think about it because it's like the fish that doesn't know it's wet. I'm in this thing and I don't have to think about it at all. Mm-hmm. And then you come here going, do you realize you do this? Like, oh. And then, of course, then I started thinking about things when I visited the Philippines that I never thought about.
Yeah.
And there were even times when you would say, okay, we're going to go visit a castle to marry now. You're going to need to take off your theology hat and put on your anthropology hat to appreciate it.
Yep, that's correct.
Well, like that time we were driving down from Cebu, right? From between Cebu and Oslo.
Yes.
That's when, what was that? What was that called? Do you remember what it was called?
That was the island. I think that's when we went to see the whale sharks. Is that
right.
It? Yes.
Yeah, but we stopped by there on the way from Cebu City down to Oslo.
Oh, that's when I actually forgot what it was.
You don't remember the name of it?
Is it a church?
There was the castle, remember?
Oh, the castle
that
to
had
Mary.
all those,
Yes,
had those dolls
yes.
of Mary on it.
Yeah,
And,
I think it's called
big long line because it was like a pilgrimage site.
Yes, it's called the Simala Church because I think the location of the place is Simala. So I think from what I've read on that place is that the one that built that place, he got a vision from Mary, saying, "You need to build a place for me and this in this exact location."
Okay.
And that's why he was able to build that grand palace dedicated to Mary, where people can go and have pilgrimages there of show their devotion to Mary. And there's also masses in that inside the church. That was dedicated to Mary.
Well, it was quite a structure. I mean, it was really elaborate. It had that walkway that went all the way from where we parked all the way up to the whole castle with causeways and bridges going around it.
Yes.
And then inside were all these different glass cases.
Yeah.
And these were all these glass cases were these figurines. I don't want to say dolls. I mean, that scene doesn't sound respectful, but I mean, I don't know what you statues, but they're dressed up. I mean, they were adorned rather elaborately, but many of them are various different colors. And so,
that's the thing. Mary for us is not just one, like that Virgin Mary that you see, like the one in, what was the one in France, like the Bernadette, like was like dressed in blue and white.
Okay.
I mean, what we did is we kind of localized it in a way where there's a Mary that, like she has a local name in this region.
Okay.
She has another local name in this region. So she's kind of dressed like this. But in this region, she's dressed like this. And she's called a different name. And that's what you see in those statues. They were like she was clothed differently depending on what name is she taking on that for that statue.
So you could almost expect as many different versions of Mary as you will encounter cultures in the Philippines.
Oh, yes. And especially like baby Jesus there. Baby Jesus, we call him Santo Nino.
Well, I remember we went to that one in that big, cathedral
Yes.
to Santa Nina in Cebu
Yes.
City. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Santo Nino there is not like the one that you see here as a baby in the nativity. It's like a little child with like this big cloak of red.
Right.
Like it's like a robe king almost, So we kind of took representations of that.
Interesting.
And even Jesus there is not just, we have the Jesus that we see here with the crucifix.
Right.
But we also have the Sacred Heart of Jesus, for example,
Yeah.
is another image. And I think the Sacred Heart, though, is not just for the Philippines, though.
Right.
I think it really came from the outside. It was just important to the Philippines.
Right, because it was a Spanish colony, right? So,
Yes.
so there's going to be representations of Roman Catholicism there in the Philippines. That's true of everywhere Roman Catholicism has gone.
Yeah.
But there's going to be ways in which it's customized to the Philippines also.
Yes. And
Yeah.
even like the Jesus of Nazareth, we have also a Jesus where it's like his skin is darker than
Right.
the normal Jesus that you see.
Right.
So, yes.
They haven't gotten the whitening cream for that Jesus yet.
No, that wasn't invented yet at the time.
That was one of the things that really stood out to me because, well, of course, as I go to visit your family in the Philippines, I'm there finishing my MA in anthropology at the time, and so everything's just, all synapses are firing. I'm
Yes.
noticing everything, and I remember specifically when you go by like a pharmacy and all these whitening creams everywhere, and I was just
Yeah.
freaking out. And you're like, What's your problem? Are you that much of a politically correct Westerner? I'm like, no. But what's with the whitening cream and
Yeah.
all these posters everywhere? Stay young, stay white, and in the Cebu Pacific Air magazine
Yes.
on the plane. I'm like, what is that? And then I realized, everybody just wants to be lighter.
Yeah.
And I was like, why?
And it's not just confined to the Philippines. It's really the whole
Yeah.
kind of area of that Asia. Korea is big on that. Japan is big on that. So
Oh gosh, there's old Chinese and Japanese paintings that are long predate any contact with the West.
Yeah.
Of showing like elite, with white skin in their paintings, and it took me a while to understand that. I didn't really get that at the time. I still was conditioned from part of the. I mean, I can say I've pushed back against Western education and Western political correctness. But there's still, it seeped in a little bit where I was worried about the white privilege thing.
Yeah.
And so I go and I see that, and I'm like, what in the world is this? Took me a while to realize, that's the leisure color,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So the leisure color in the West is, you actually have enough free time to lay by the pool or go to the beach. And so a tan is the
Yeah.
leisure color here. Whereas there, the leisure color is you're not outside working in the sun.
Yes.
Your skin hasn't been baked in the sun. And so that's why lighter skin would be a status symbol.
Yeah.
Just like people would have a spray on tan here
Yes.
as part of their leisure color, there someone would want to have like a rub on whiteness.
Yeah.
That was part of those cultural differences that took me a minute to wrap my mind around.
Well, it's also, I think there's also the colonial, kind of like our colonial past, though, also, where, we were colonized by Spain and
Right.
and the U.S., where, we were colonized also by lighter skinned people.
Spain isn't all that light. I mean,
Yeah, you're right. But they have mestizo and mestiza. They call them
Right.
mestizo and mestiza, which are really like, almost Caucasian in features.
Right, okay,
And
yeah.
so the descendants of those who settled in the Philippines, they're mainly the land. They own a lot of land there, or they mainly become.
True.
I mean, they still retain their. They're rich.
Right,
They
okay.
still have. So, I think when you have kind of lighter skin there, it's more associated with like privilege,
Interesting.
wealth, status. It's a status symbol because
Right.
you feel like, I'm part of the higher class now.
because
higher-
because the Spanish would have been like the hacienda owners and so
Yes.
forth. Okay,
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
And even the Americans, so like, they have more earning power than us. So
okay.
than the average Filipino.
Yeah,
So I think
it's-
that's also where it came from.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. So now you came. We've talked about this before. I appreciate you kind of rehashing this with me again. But you immigrated to the U.S. Well, first you came to the U.S. On a work visa, right?
Yes, that's
it was
correct.
in 2006.
It was in 2006, October 2006.
Okay, and then because you had started as an accountant, you got your accounting degree. You started as an accountant in Manila, right?
Yeah, well, it actually really my hometown in Bacolod, and then after 3 years, I moved to Manila.
Okay.
I worked there for a couple of years, and then there was an opportunity for me to come here.
Okay.
They were looking for accountants at that time, with the public accountants
Okay.
or auditors, external auditors.
I
So
see.
there was an opportunity. So I applied for that and got a work visa to work here in an accounting firm
Okay.
based in Miami.
Okay. So you're working in Manila, but that opportunity comes up, and you're going to take it.
Yes.
And so, but the company is extending the offer of a work visa.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, they're the ones who, I interviewed for them. They applied, and then, once I got hired, they applied for my work visa. They, they basically paid for my flight, for my board and lodging here for a month until I can find my, permanent accommodations.
Okay.
So that visa is like good for 3 years, and then after 3 years, you can renew it if you want to. And then and so it's like another renewal so it's like 6 years. You can have a work visa for 6 years.
So the progression goes work visa, green card.
Yes. Yeah.
So and how long from you get here in 2006 with work visa? How long until in the process of getting the green card?
I think I got my green card I would say it was almost 8th year. It was in my 8th year.
Okay.
And then you do have to move up to the company, though. I mean, you do have to get your CPA, your US CPA license.
Okay.
And then you have to be promoted to manager
Okay.
before the company will, pay for your green card.
Okay.
For you to be sponsored for a green card.
But all the while, you really are demonstrating your value to the company, your productivity here. You're probably watching your P's and Q's like crazy, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's just really even the I mean, after the first 3 years, you have to renew your visa, and just like all the documentation you have to submit, because you have to go back to the U.S. embassy and kind of like reapply again,
Right.
and like make sure you have all your paperwork in place.
Okay.
And I said you have to make sure you did not run against the law or have run-ins with the law.
You don't even want a traffic ticket at all. I mean,
Yes,
right?
yeah. Or definitely during my green card application and my U.S. citizenship,
Right.
I have to declare even the traffic tickets.
Okay.
To make sure that they have to really ensure that you're really in good moral standing and good moral character before they can even
Right.
approve that application. And even like in Miami, I remember that I guess in Florida at that time, I even have to reapply for my driver's license every year while I was on a work visa. So I have to go to the DMV lineup every year because they will only give you a license for a year.
I see,
So
okay.
it was a lot of hassle, but that's what you do. You're not a citizen here. You're just visiting, so you have to respect the laws and regulations
Right.
of the place that you're working.
So the whole time you've got your driver's license, you're watching your P's and Q's, and there's this sense of you could any wrong move could derail this at any time.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's really the kind of like what I guess what's hanging over your head is that you have to make sure you follow the law here because you can be deported anytime. There, like. Unless you want to be, just be undocumented and
No, gosh, yeah.
and kind of hide from the law. But I mean, that was never my intention.
Right.
I feel
well,
like
I mean, and you're not in the type of profession that could tolerate that either.
oh, definitely, yes, yeah. And even in our profession, because I'm an external auditor, we have to like get as part of your CPA license. Every year, even now, I have to complete an ethics exam.
Okay.
Like somewhat certifying you're following the code of ethics of
So-
the accountants.
So, excuse me. So you were sworn in as a U.S. citizen like just a couple months after we were married. But how long? And so it goes green card. No, it goes visa, work visa, green card. When did you get that?
I think I got that if I became a U.S. citizen in 2018. I think I got that like about 2013 2013 maybe or 2014.
Okay.
Yes.
And then at some point, the decision was made to seek citizenship.
Yes. Well, it really was really driven by the politics at that time.
Okay.
Because I never, I mean, like for me, just giving up your citizenship to become a U.S. citizen was not a big was a really big deal
Okay.
because, it essentially like if you don't want to become a dual citizen, you're really renouncing the citizenship of the country where you were born,
Right.
and where my family still lives. So
Right.
that was a big deal for me. So I actually don't want to become a U.S. citizen until Trump actually became president. And it was more because in 2016 I wasn't really big fan of Trump. I guess
Right.
let's
Right.
just say that.
I remember talking about that.
Yeah, and I was still a consumer of the mainstream media.
Right,
So all I know is how bad he was.
Right.
And at that time, I really badly wanted to vote. I really badly wanted to feel like I want to have a voice in this process.
Yeah.
And I know I could, but I could not because I wasn't a U.S. citizen at that time.
Right.
So I felt powerless at that time, and I felt like, and I thought like, why can't I have a voice here? If I'm
Right.
living here, if I'm paying my taxes here,
Right.
if I work here, and I plan to live here as indefinitely as I can, or how, so I'm like, why should I become a U.S. citizen and participate in this process
Right,
if I
right.
can? So that really was the main factor where I felt like, I'm paying my taxes. I'm
Right.
contributing to the social security system.
Right.
Why can't I fully participate now in
Yeah.
the other benefits that a U.S. citizen gets?
Yeah. Because
Yes.
you and I met, you were already studying, hot and heavy about to go through that process, and
Yes.
eventually, and it was, I can't help but think back and kind of laugh a little bit because you studied so thoroughly and so with such detail that you could have given a strong essay answer to all 100 of the test questions that they gave you. But of course, once you go through the interview process, you only have to make 7 out of the 10, correct?
Yeah, you only need to get 7 out of 10.
So here you were ready to ace all 100 categories that they had given you to study, and after the 7th one, they're like, "Okay, you're good."
Yeah, they didn't even finish the 10.
Right?
I'm like, you'll never know, right?
Right.
I won't take any chances.
I know. It's like another CPA exam. I'm going to
Yes.
ace this thing.
Exactly.
Well, I was very fascinated by that because, well, one, that idea that, well, the Americans, someone who's lived here, who by accident of geography and just was born here, you have these assumptions as an American citizen that, and it dawns on you that it's something to seek
Yes.
because you're just here.
Yes.
And it's just, you have this assumptions that like, this is just the way things are.
Yeah.
You don't have some other frame of reference to say, okay, I'm going to go there for the opportunities and stay there for the security of it.
Yeah.
And then really transfer, loyalty there. That's something that's very difficult for me to relate to.
Yeah.
But I will say that so someone of the insider takes a lot of things for granted, but is very appreciative of the outsider saying, okay, I'm going to follow all the protocols I have to go from A to B.
Yeah.
And not just assume, well, I just want to be here, therefore you have to let me in. You have to make me make me an
Yes.
insider.
Yeah.
There's very appreciative of that level of respect, that level of following the rules in a
Yes.
sense. And as a result, it's something for which a lot of Americans who are born naturally here look at semantics are important. I really differentiate immigrant from migrant because immigrant is by nature legal and
Yeah.
migrant couldn't care less.
Yes.
And so for a more natural born American looks at the immigrant and says, my goodness, you went through all the rules and went through all the protocols and washed your P's and Q's and followed the law in order to be with me.
Yeah.
That makes you feel very proud
Yes.
that, oh, wow, that's kudos to you. My goodness. And they're
Yeah.
like, and they all stand up and applaud going, that is something else.
Yeah.
That's something to be extremely proud of. And so, but then that goes back into the debate now of, because being immigration is always a big topic. It's been a big topic. I mean, nowadays with the current administration, it's a big topic, but it's been a big topic since the 90s.
Yes.
I mean, as for when I first became politically aware, politicians were talking about this as a topic, and so it's nothing new of how to address that. But it was always a thing of what's the rhetoric, what's the language people use to talk about this. And one thing I always noticed was that there was, it wasn't, what people use the term xenophobic. It wasn't fear of the other. It was just you don't want to see your country delegitimized for the natural born American. You don't want to see your country delegitimized by the fact that someone can just walk in and it's now just, okay, here I am.
Yes.
You have to treat me like an insider. And that feels like that diminishes you in a sense. Like, what? We don't have laws we can enforce now? But then I heard the other voices from legal immigrants saying, and they seemingly were more passionate about this.
Yeah.
Going, I went through all this and now you want to jump the line?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's really like, when you said, when you work hard for it.
Right.
And you value it more when you work hard for it. And so you place more importance to that. Like it takes on a greater value than just it was just given to me.
Right.
So I feel like, and I said, and even you said, and I felt that of like, why are you more patriotic? I think sometimes than like you're more passionate about stuff than people who were born here.
Right.
And it's like because you don't know what we sacrificed to come here.
Right.
All the journey that we had to go here and become a U.S. citizen. I mean, it's a lot of sacrifice also on my part, for example, because I mean, my family was left behind. So I always now I have to accept that I cannot just see my family every year, even if I want to, or like several times a year. I mean, they're halfway across the world.
Right.
But I mean, America has just been good to me. So that's why I love them. You love the country that you've become now.
Right.
And it really is like, it's just like what you can say. Like, it's like when we're trying to get pregnant and then like when you're trying to get pregnant and you cannot, and finally you have this child and you just love this child and you're so scared that they're going to be, taken away from you just because of how much you went through to get to that.
Right.
So I think, and I've had people talk to me to like, oh yeah, I know this person, like she's Filipino too, or she came and she's like, so like she's just, and we've met those people, like, people from Thailand who are like, they're just like really rabid, like, patriots. And you're like,
you're like, whoa, my goodness.
Yeah. So,
right. Well, because they appreciate it in ways that, like I said, the natural born American just can't relate to. You don't think about it. You just take it for granted.
Yeah. And then of course, I mean, this is still America. This is the land of, it's the American dream. I mean, that's why a lot of people want to go here. And if you come from a country that's not as rich as America, really get to appreciate that you're here.
Yeah, big
that
difference.
you were one of the privileged few that was able to come here legally.
Oh, I know. Well, it's funny because, and we've talked about, something else we've talked about before is I've always been struck by America is unique in the sense of, in the manner in which it's formed and in the manner in which it collects its people together. Of all the countries that I'm aware of, it most closely resembles the manner in which, throughout the Bible, God assembles His people.
Yeah.
So, like for example, in the Old Testament, you would have the Israelites were comprised. They may have been natural born there, but they're also comprised of just about anyone else who came in who assimilated into the culture.
That's true.
And so you have Rahab the harlot and Ruth the Moabitess and Uriah the Hittite, and by all of a sudden, by declaring their loyalty to the God of Israel and to that tribe, suddenly now they're Israelites.
Yes.
And so there's a sense in which, even dating back into the Old Testament, citizenship and tribal identity is a matter of ideology and loyalty.
Yeah.
It's never been mere birthright. It's always been a choice of loyalty.
Yes.
And then you get into the New Testament, then the races there are then binary in that sense too. There's those who are in Christ and those not,
Yes.
and those
Yeah.
who need to be. And so there, and as a result, America is pretty unique in the sense of there is no America's not a race,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? We talk about Native Americans who are who were indigenous tribes that were here before
Yes.
the English colonies, but even before the English colonies, you had Spanish and then
Yeah.
so forth. But there is no American race.
Yeah.
All there is American choice
Yes.
and American loyalty.
Yeah.
And as a result, people may have been born here by accident of geography, but anyone who is naturalized here as a citizen, in something of a fun paradox, they're naturalized here as a citizen, they're now full-blooded American,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
I know. Yeah.
That's like no other country has that.
No, that's the thing. That's really what makes America unique, as you said,
Right.
because I did come from a country where, like 95% of the people look just like you. Your skin color, like, and then you come here and it's just like I call it the United. I'm not sure if you know this brand, United Colors of Benetton. It's like
Yeah.
it's just like different colors,
Right.
But I said they're all the same under the same flag, under the same country, and yeah, this is really like I think the only country in the world where you have this mixture of people,
Right.
Black, white, brown,
Right, right. Well, I
whatever
mean-
color it is.
Well, we talked about this before, where if I were, say, for example, if I immigrated to the Philippines with you,
Yeah.
to there, I could be a. This is almost kind of funny to even picture it, but I, for example, could get a Filipino passport. I could transfer my citizenship there and so forth, but I would never be full-blooded Filipino.
Yeah,
Because I would just be another tall white guy that stands out at the mall.
yeah,
Right?
yeah. No, like there's gonna be people like you there, but it's gonna be very few.
Right, exactly right. So that person may be a Filipino citizen, but they'll never be racially Filipino.
Yes.
They'll never be full-blooded Filipino. And that's true of just basically every other culture in the world.
Yeah.
Where I could never be, no matter where I immigrated to, I could never be full-blooded Indian or Chinese
Yeah.
or Japanese or Bolivian. I mean, that's just, I could never be that.
Yeah.
I would just be someone, because I would just be an outsider with that citizenship.
Yes.
But America is unique in the sense of once someone immigrates here and their loyalty is transferred through ceremony and they declare their citizenship and they've been naturalized,
Yeah.
you're full-blooded American because race is defined by loyalty.
Yes.
And that's, of all the geopolitics in the world, that one most closely resembles what we see in the Bible of how God assembles his people together.
Yeah, that's true because like Jesus said, it's not just the Jews.
Right.
This Christianity is also for Gentiles.
Right.
As long as you believe in me, So I
Yeah.
think you're right. That really how the way America was formed in a way kind of resembles how
Right.
Christianity really was born.
Right.
Through Jesus.
Well, there's another way in which there's parallels also that people don't often think about. This was pointed out to me by a bishop years ago, because I was asking about confirmation,
Yes.
because we have baptism, we have confirmation, and one of the things he talked about, he said, name another culture that doesn't have some manner of initiation rites to confirm to all who might ask that you are definitely part of this tribe.
Yeah.
And in the U.S., in the journey to U.S. citizenship, you have a work visa, which means you're invited in. And now we're going to basically watch to see how American you really want to be.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to watch. Do you want to learn our history and our laws and regulations? Do you want to abide by them?
Yeah.
Do you want to be a productive member? And so there's a sense in which we're going to watch to see if this is really taking hold.
Yes.
And at some point, if you seek this, we're going to confirm your Americanness.
Yes.
Basically, with the naturalization ceremony.
Yeah.
And that parallels the Catholic practice of, okay, you were baptized. Yes, you're part of this covenant community.
Yeah.
You're growing up in the faith, but you want to be part of a tribe? The tribe gets to say how much we all should assume that you've taken this on.
Yeah, that's why you it takes a while from baptism to confirmation.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to take a long time.
Yeah.
That's kind of elastic.
Yeah.
For children who are baptized as children, and typically sometime in their tweens is when they're
Yes.
seeking confirmation then. Roughly about the time when, Jewish tradition, you would have had a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah.
Yes.
Where now you are a free moral agent responsible for your own conduct and faith under God.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, however elastic that may be, there's still a little bit of time where we go, okay, we're watching, we're seeing how much this is really sticking
Yes.
in you, and then we're going to lay hands on you. We're going to or have a ceremony to confirm that now you are part of this.
Yeah. That's
And
true.
yes, it's kind of incremental, but nevertheless, it's just part of how a tribe knows their people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was described to me that the American method of bringing in the immigrant that's going to be now full-blooded American,
yeah.
how that parallels the Catholic practice of bringing someone fully into this Christian tribe.
That's true. I never thought of that, but yeah, you actually described that really perfectly.
Right? I mean, well, like I said, when that was pointed out to me, because I come from a tradition, you were raised Roman Catholic, I come from a prior tradition where someone just claims to be Christian because they just decided one day while they were watching a TV evangelist that that seems cool. I'm just
Yeah.
now just going to call myself a Christian. And everyone else just has to deal with it.
Yes.
Whether or not you can confirm anything about that in me is irrelevant.
Yeah.
I'm calling myself that, and everyone else just has to, get with my program.
Yeah.
And that actually parallels the illegal migration we see.
Yeah, that's true. Like you cannot just come in here and say, since I'm already here, then
Exactly
I can
right.
just claim myself to be one.
Right.
When you do have the trial period also,
Right.
Of making sure, like, are you really going to be,
Right.
following our laws, following the Constitution,
Well, in anthropology, you see every tribe has their means by which these rites of passage, whereby people kind of go, okay, how well are you assimilating?
Yeah.
God knows the heart, but the rest of us have to watch you. And in the ancient church, what you had is someone might come in for instruction. If someone was, say, a child that's different. But if an adult comes into the church, says, "I'm curious about this thing. I've heard about this new Jewish sect that follows the Rabbi Jesus. Oh, where is he? Oh, he's ascended to heaven. Tell me more about this." And so now you're wanting to find out about this, and so you come to the church.
Yeah.
What you would do is you would come in and you would hear the readings, you would hear the epistle read, you would maybe hear the gospel, and you get to the point where now, all this time, we call it the ante-communion. All the points before communion, you're participating in all that. You're there you're a brand new person curious about the faith.
Yeah.
And you may have been, made that very plain, very public. But then when it comes to the time of communion, that's when those who have not yet been confirmed, or at the time they even would have been baptized, that at the time those who have not been baptized would then excuse themselves over to another antechamber to continue with instruction.
Yes.
Instruction on the Apostles' Creed, which will be their baptismal confession at the time.
Okay.
And instruction. And then communion is for those who basically have gone through all that process.
Yeah.
And there's an ancient saying of, I don't remember how that's spoken in Greek, but it was the seed of the doors. It's like close the doors so that communion just now happens with those who've gone through everything, whether baptism, confirmation, all the ancient processes that this communion is held for that. Well, because communion was held behind closed doors, and some of the language of communion leaks out about eating the body and blood of Jesus.
Yeah.
Roman suspicions were raised, like, I think they're doing cannibalism back there. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but we hear about them eating the body and blood of Jesus all the time. That's weird, and that's where the accusation of cannibalism comes out, because communion is happening behind closed doors.
Yes.
The problem is, but the thing is that someone, once they go through about a year of that instruction, they're about a year of, this is an adult, they go through about a year of having instruction during the time when everyone else is having communion. Then they're baptized. The Apostles' Confession, the Apostles' Creed is their confession at baptism. And then they're made as part of everyone else who's going to take communion. that's actually a necessary protocol when you're not sure if you're being infiltrated with spies that are going to turn you over to Roman emperors that want to, you know, cover you in pitch and set
Yes.
you on fire just to light their garden party.
Yeah.
But that's a very ancient practice, and it's no different than any other tribe
Yes.
that would say, okay, we've got rites of passage, just to kind of we don't. It's not that I doubt you. It's just that human processes, human tribes, human gatherings need ways of declaring your loyalty.
Yeah, no, exactly.
You know,
And like,
I mean,
can you assimilate? You know, can you
right?
be, can you, as you said, can you become one of us?
Right,
in a
exactly.
way?
I mean, this is
Yeah.
true of any human relationship. I mean, you know,
Yes.
you say, oh, you say, you know, two people are dating. You ask a girlfriend, oh, you're dating that guy? She says, yeah, we've been dating for 3 years. I'm like, okay, well, what have you done? Well, we've only ever met at Starbucks.
Yeah.
For 3 years, you've not done anything else to demonstrate that the relationship is progressing?
Yes.
He hasn't taken you out to a nicer dinner? You haven't gone to a nothing? No, we've only ever met at coffee shops. I'm
Yeah.
like, really? Okay. There's relationships don't work that way.
Yeah.
You have some means of telling that the relationship is progressing along.
Yeah, that's true.
But I remember that was pointed out to me that how immigration in the U.S. is pretty unique and how it parallels the manner in which we immigrate into the body of Christ.
That's kind of interesting. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yes, I've never thought of that, but you're right. That really is in line with how
Right.
with how our church is.
Well, I make the argument, and I'm not naive enough as to say that the America's founders were all Christians. I know that that's not true, but they were steeped in a Christian worldview at the time, and we have talked about this many times. Whether what's the definition of culture? Those things that everyone knows so much that no one has to say.
Yeah.
Well, they're so steeped in Christian worldview that they don't even have to say it out loud in many ways. It's just obvious in how they operate and the way they write.
Yes.
And I think one of those, and some would even suggest that our American separation of powers is indicative of how they have a Christian understanding of human nature. You've got to separate power as much as you can in order to mitigate how much power can be used against its citizens.
Yeah.
But I think you can make the case that understanding of how you progressively assimilate into a tribe, parallel to how the church does it,
Yes. No, I agree.
and parallel to the church, once you're fully assimilated into the tribe, you are fully in.
Yes.
We don't make any distinction between you or anybody else naturally born here, except for one office. Okay, so you can't be president.
Yes.
Dang it.
Yeah, that's the only.
Sorry to put a
exception.
glass ceiling on your ambition
Yeah.
there, right? But presently, I mean, you can look at Congress now, and you can see various different members of Congress that are immigrants here.
Oh yeah, I mean like Marco Rubio. I think he was born here though,
Yeah.
but I know his parents
Right.
were Cubans,
Mhm,
Cuban
yeah.
immigrants.
But there are other members of Congress right now who themselves were immigrants from other countries.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't remember all their names, but there are a few.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
But the idea is that right now our Constitution only says, okay, the president himself has to have been a natural-born citizen. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Or someone in line to possibly be in succession for the president in the case of some emergency. So I would think that would actually also have to be true of, say, the vice president or the Speaker of the House.
Huh.
I don't know all the laws behind that.
Yeah, I don't know too.
But the point is, of all the things one can do in this country, it's my understanding, and I could be proven wrong about this, but it's my understanding that our Constitution only reserves that one office for natural-born citizens. Everybody else can be from someplace else.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, but that's the idea of whether it's like once you go through all this, there's still just the binary categories, American or not.
Yeah.
America's not a race; it's loyalty.
Yes.
That's why, in parallel to that, we've talked about how race is not a thing. Even anthropologists understand biological race is not a thing.
Yeah.
I remember learning that specifically before, just being amazed that Anthropologists will say, no, biological race is not a thing, because you take any of the different ethnicities, Indian, from India, Africa, major parts of Asia, South America, at the genetic level, the things that make all those expressions of humanity the same dwarf any differences you can point out. Like the physical differences,
Yes.
or anything slightly that might be specific to health concerns, are so minute compared to all the other things that make for a common humanity that they don't even recognize it as biological races as a category.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean,
Yeah.
as you say, if we really drill down our DNA,
Right.
we have a little bit of everything.
Exactly,
We cannot
right.
just like, oh, I'm just like pure this,
Right.
Probably except maybe those who, like the isolated tribes
Yeah.
in and the Amazon or in Africa maybe, but those like
Even then,
us,
even then.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. They might be even have a mixture too.
Well,
Yeah.
and for that very reason, I think that going on this theme of race as a function of loyalty or a function of belief, when we're talking about Christian faith, Old Testament only recognizes two races, Jew and Gentile.
Yes.
New Testament only recognizes two races, in Christ, those in Christ, and those that need to be.
Yes.
Right?
That's true.
Those are the only two races. In the biblical worldview, those are the only two races that it acknowledges. And keeping with that rhetoric, I would say that the only way to achieve an interracial marriage, because some people still every now and then will try to keep this category. In the Old South, there were times when somehow a white person couldn't marry a black person and so forth. I think that as we drill down into the biblical understanding of of humanity, the only way to achieve an interracial marriage is for a Christian to marry a non-Christian.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that would be the only thing that ever raises red flags. You and I are not an interracial marriage because we're both Christian.
Yes.
And if two people are, the differences you would have to overcome in order to achieve harmony if a Christian married a non-Christian, those differences just dwarf any other differences you might encounter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's because the differences you have to overcome just by being male and female, that's enough.
Yes.
And all the things we have in common as Christians, that dwarfs everything else that you would face
Yes.
anyway. And so when you say, well, is this an interracial marriage? No, we're both Christian.
Yeah. I
Right.
know.
Um,
It's a different take, It's
Right,
like
right.
than what most people consider interracial marriage.
right.
Yeah.
For me, because I don't see this as an interracial marriage. I just do think that there are cultural things that you're acquainted with that I
Yeah.
just find interesting sometimes.
Yes.
Like when we go to the Philippines and I'm like, okay, let's ride a jeepney. And you're like, you're not going to fit in a jeepney. It's just
Yeah.
not happening.
I know. Yeah, I think that's really just I don't know what to say about that.
Right. Well, so really quickly, in the time we have remaining, I wanted to ask a little bit about some of the cultural differences that we had, that we've encountered. Some of the
Sure.
things that you went, this is weird,
Yeah.
going from there to here. I could talk all day long about things I encountered in the Philippines.
I know.
that I found both entertaining, that made me look foolish and silly. But what are some? I could go on and on about that. But what were some of the things that you encountered going from the Philippines to here, where you went, really? You do that?
Well, let me think about it first. Because I'm drawing a blank. I know there's a lot.
Well, one of the things we talked about is the fact that Philippines is primarily Roman Catholic, and you
Yes.
come to the U.S. and there's this wide expression of Christian thought.
That's
right?
true. You're right. I think that's really I guess one of the culture shock here is that, you come here and like, I would guess, I might be accurate or I might be wrong, but I don't think I'm totally wrong. But about 95% of Filipinos, identify themselves as Roman Catholic.
Okay.
And you just kind of grow up with people with the same beliefs, with the same, just same religious beliefs and traditions. Then you come here, and then, as you said, there's this different types of churches. When I first met you, you were using all these other words that I like end times and, what was the other words that you were saying?
What, the big ones or
Yeah,
the
the big ones.
oh, like dispensationalism?
Yeah, like dispensationalism. I'm
What are you
like,
talking about?
like I'm, or like and like kind of like also like they are Lutheran, they are Episcopalian,
Right,
or
right.
they're like
Meth
Baptist,
or
but they're like
Methodist, right?
yes, and even the Baptists kind of have a different categories
Right.
too, and in Philippines we have Catholics, and then the other side which are the Protestants, we just call them born again Christians.
Right.
So
Right.
and then we do have Muslims there, but that's a different one.
Those weird
But
born again Christians.
yeah, so like we I just feel like okay, that's just it. Like we
Right,
don't
right.
really identify them into, and then I felt like our yeah, I know, as you said, Roman Catholic Church is not perfect.
Right,
Every
right.
church tradition is not perfect.
Right.
And so there are some weird practices maybe
Yeah.
that you feel like I'm not even sure if
Right,
that's in
right.
the Bible, but for the most part, it's just like like you kind of just you were born into the tradition.
Right.
I never thought of changing any religion.
Right.
I mean, you do have some instances in your
Right.
life where you have like some crisis of faith, or you kind of doubt your faith.
Yeah.
But there was never a point of me, I might just become a Baptist now because I really don't believe in the Catholic tradition now.
So that level, that kaleidoscope of choice was just not a thing.
Yeah, it was just more like, if you don't like this Roman Catholic Church because you don't like the priest or how he delivers the sermon, then you just find another Roman Catholic Church.
There's
down
another
the
one down
street.
the other corner.
Yeah, there's always there. Even here in the U.S.,
Right, right.
I've lived in different states and cities, but every new address, you just look it up. There's always like two or
Right.
three in
Yeah.
the area that
Right.
you can, I don't like this. I'm going to go here. Or their schedule doesn't fit my schedule. I'll go
Right.
here. But you know that in those churches, the service is the same. The order of the service is the same.
Right.
The priest may be different, but you just have the comfort that every time you go there, it's always going to be the same.
Right.
You're going to get communion. You're going to get a homily.
Right.
You're going to get readings. And you know that all of these churches are aligned with Rome or the Vatican.
right.
So there is that comfort
Right.
knowing that wherever you go, it will always be the same.
We've talked about
teachings.
this. We've talked about this before. The Catholic, and what we call the Catholic comfort of settled matters.
Yes.
It's like I don't
Yeah.
have to think about this too much. It is what it is.
Yes.
You know.
And then when you talk to me about religion, it's like I feel sometimes you're a little traumatized of like there's like PTSD in a way, and I'm like, what did you go through? I just feel like I went to a Catholic school for literally from kindergarten to college, but I never felt like I was traumatized by that. Like that I feel like okay, I'm not gonna do any religion anymore.
Right,
That was
right.
just a traumatic phase of my childhood. So, but like talking to you and listening to other people, I just feel like
Right.
I'm a little confused when we first met and you
Yeah.
started introducing this to me, because I'm just like I never heard of these terms. I never even knew this existed.
right.
And then especially when you started talking about like really the technical stuff, I'm like it just feels a little weird to me.
Well, when I talk about that, when I talk about or when you hear people talk about different religious experiences, do you sometimes feel looking at them thinking, well, that's what you get for having so much choice?
I think so, because you do have the freedom here to just like, well, if I don't like
Right.
being an Episcopalian, then I can just become a Lutheran now.
Right, right.
Like you have so many choices here. But there is like really, okay, if you don't become a Roman Catholic, then you become a born again Christian.
Right.
But even that is still a minority there,
Right.
that the choices available are really not a lot.
Right.
So I felt like you have no choice but to kind of just like, well, I just have to stay in here and
Right.
kind of like,
I know.
kind of like process through this. Process through this stuff.
Yeah, there's a sense in which, the exaggerated proliferation of choice can be paralyzing in a sense.
It could be.
You have so many things to choose from, then you're now oversaturated with religious choice, which actually has been to your detriment in a sense.
Yes.
You have this religious anxiety from having to choose your stuff all the time.
Yes. And I mean, I think it also kind of extends to like I told you about, how my family is, how my parents are, of like, we were not given a choice of not going to college at all. Like that wasn't even a choice.
Well, you said, well, there's like four acceptable professions, and
Yes.
you have freedom of choice, but the freedom is to choose from the list of available choices.
Yes. So I think in a macro level, that's kind of like the Catholic Church there too.
Right.
Like you have no choice. You were born into the
Right.
church, and so you have no choice. You just have to kind of, because you have no other choice.
Yeah, right.
So because you're stuck, you're there.
Yep.
But then you come here and you have so many choices. So
Oh, I
that's
know,
kind of
right?
like me too. Like, there's no option not to go. You're gonna go to college. It's really the courses that you have to
I know.
to figure out.
You remember it was the movie with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, You Got Mail?
Yes.
It was a great line from that where he walks into a Starbucks and he looks at the menu and he says, okay, this is good. Starbucks, a place where people who struggle with choices must make 20 different choices at once.
Yeah. I know. You're actually, if you go to Starbucks, actually, I feel like you're honing your decision-making skills there because you have to get like, is it tall, grande, or venti? You have to is it like foam, no foam? Or
Right.
whipped cream or no cream? Like hot milk or like fat-free milk or...
Right. So, and they're going to ask your permission at every one of those things. Well, are you okay with 2% milk? I'm like, fine, just give me the freaking coffee.
Yes.
So there's an idea that America might be paralyzed by religious choice anxiety.
I think
There's
it
so many
could
things
be.
to choose from.
Yes.
You just can't even pick.
Yes. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that, this is not more of like, of course, people have to have freedom, right?
Right.
But I feel like you have to have set also boundaries, of kind of like parameters so that they can
Right.
make an informed choices
Yeah.
and not just like, oh, if I don't like this and I go to this and I go to that. But
Right.
it's like an open, kind of like an open border,
Right, right.
where there's no
No
walls.
guardrails anymore.
Guardrails,
Right,
yes, that's what I was
exactly.
looking for.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, that's very instructive because I remember early on. I mean, years ago, back when I was in a more entrepreneurial religious tradition, there was this thought of, well, as creative as you can be and as different you can make yourself, if you're going to be competitive if you're going to have a niche in a highly competitive religious marketplace, well, then you're going to have to be one of the various different things people could choose from.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to have your niche? How are you going to capitalize on the fact that people have all these different specialized proclivities?
Yes.
And we've talked about this before. You drive through a town and you see some of the most interesting and creative names of churches.
Yes.
Going, really?
I know.
I mean, and again, a lot of them sound like, addiction recovery centers.
Yes.
And so, but it's like, now I'm getting to the point where I realize, okay, choice is a good thing, but that actually can be overdone.
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
like as I said, you get paralyzed by choice after
Right.
a while because you're like, you just don't know what you want now because
Right.
there's so many choices available out there.
Right. And it parallels what you've said about education sometimes.
Yes.
What makes a Filipino child so productive? Because they have a list of 4 things they can
Yes.
study after.
There's like and you're kind of drilled down from childhood of like, this is what you want to be. You have to be like this.
Right.
So
Whereas
you're
the opposite
conditioned.
extreme, I'm sure that I've argued that there's a middle ground. There's what we call via media. There's a middle way to go, and sometimes I'll crack up because you'll tell me about the Asian way. I'm going, oh my gosh, that's restrictive. But I have to acknowledge that the American way is maybe the opposite extreme,
Yeah.
and not the middle way either. And the extreme is your children have so many choices. Oh, you
Yeah.
can be anything you want, and basically that paralyzes them from being anything
yes.
too.
Yeah.
You've
I
given
think
them,
so,
you've
too.
given them so much choice. You actually wind up giving them no direction.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
as I said, there has to be guardrails
Right,
also,
right.
where, this is how many choices you're allowed to make.
Right?
So
That's
I'm
it.
not telling you don't have a choice, but this is how many choices you're allowed to make,
Eh,
within these parameters.
And I would say that kind of touches on a big cultural difference that we've actually had fun talking about
Yes.
since we've been married. Is that okay? You come from an Asian culture to an American culture, and wow, these extremes. And sometimes I'm looking at you with shock on my face about how these are the things you self-restrict on this so that you can both be productive, pursue something of your interest, but really turn around and be a help to your family too.
Yes. Yeah.
And whereas, American children don't even think about that at all. They're like, I'm out of here and do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And never think about, will this bring honor to my family?
Yeah.
Will this actually, will this be, will my family approve of this? Couldn't care less.
Yeah. No, it is. It really is. Like our culture is really tied to family, as you said,
Right.
we really are, I guess, this, we're really just raised to like, you want to get a better education, you want to better yourself so that you can turn around and help the next sibling,
Right.
Or help your parents
Yeah.
when they grow old. So that's really like our thinking of that. It's not just like, oh, it's just all about me. It's
Yeah.
really about how can I help my family
Right.
by becoming a better person or, moving up the corporate ladder.
Right,
It's
right.
like, so that's really how kids are also conditioned even when they're young. Oh, you have to be a doctor, you have to be a nurse so that you can go abroad
Right.
and help your
Right.
siblings when it's their turn to go to college.
Right.
So
And there's
yeah.
some of that I still say, oh boy, man, that is really kind of like a narrow
Yes.
set of options. But it has woken me up to thinking about, well, you know what? I may be coming from an opposite extreme.
Yeah.
Right. And whatever that middle way is, that's interesting. That's kind of an interesting thing to pursue.
Yeah, no, I remember when I told you about that, and you were just like, like, why do you still have to help your family? Or like that's
Right.
like that is just who we are.
Right.
That's just
Right.
who we are. That's who makes us
Right.
who we are.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank you very much for talking with me. I mean, I think this, the conversation like this is just extremely helpful and fun. And we didn't touch on anything that we don't want anyone else to hear. So, like, no, don't
No,
talk.
you're welcome.
Don't talk
Yeah.
about that. That's too private. No,
Yes.
this was actually, thank you.
No, you're welcome. Yeah. No, thank you too for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about myself and my culture.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.